So Russia has invaded Ukraine, as has been warned and feared by the United States and NATO for the last several weeks. We'll have to wait and see how this entire crisis unfolds, but undoubtedly for a world coming out of 2 years of COVID-19 pandemic, this is the worst possible news. Violence in the capital of Ukraine, artillery, machinery and guns over there, and it's a complete mess right now in Kiev. But let me go back and tell you what exactly happened and how all of this started. So if I were to draw the timeline back, say if I were to begin from the end of November last year, that was when noises started being made about the heavy military build-up of Russian troops along the border with Ukraine. Now, all of this time, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that these are regular military drills. It's not a big deal. I have no intention of invading Ukraine, and you're making too much out of it. The US didn't believe him. NATO didn't believe him. And the reason for that is in 2014, Putin did invade Ukraine and annexed a part of it called Crimea. This happened around the same time that a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine was deposed, and the then rebels took over, installing Mr. Zelensky, who's the current Ukrainian president. So almost simultaneously, while Ukraine was fighting back for what they say is their independence and putting in their leader in place, Russia came and took away a part of it, that is Crimea. Now, even through all of this, and it's important to get that historical perspective to understand why all of this has happened, there are parts of Ukraine which are Russia controlled, or you could say even Russia aligned. So the language spoken there is Russia, the alignment culturally is with Russia, and rebels who are backed by Russia pretty much control most of these regions. You could call it broadly the Donbas region. Now, what has happened is Putin does not want the rest of Ukraine, which is pro-Europe, to put it very simply, to align with them further and join NATO. He is worried that the expansion of NATO right up to his border is bad news for him. And he's been saying, this is my red line that should not be crossed. Meanwhile, Ukraine at this point says, we are free to join NATO. We want to join NATO. So this is the genesis of the conflict, so to speak. So what happened? So all of these days, these troops are building up. The US and UK are warning that the number of troops is increasing. By about the 18th of Feb, there were close to 200,000 Russian troops across the border. In a few days, there were videos put out of some of those troops coming back. So the world thought the crisis has diffused for now. And Russia said, look, there was never any crisis. These troops went for a military drill. Those who have finished it have, it's a rotation. They've now come back. But no one believed him once again. Then, a few days later, in fact, on the 22nd of Feb, Putin announced that 2 regions of Donetsk and Luhansk are now free. These were technically already under Russian control because Russian-backed rebels were running them. But he announced them as independent sovereign entities from out of what is the border of Ukraine, and said, now from here on, these are the republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. US, NATO, UK responded by adding sanctions, by placing sanctions on these 2 regions, some Russian financial institutions and some Russian individuals. That was the extent of the sanctions. Now, here's where it gets pretty interesting and quite twisted. So now, if Putin wanted a reason, an excuse to invade Ukraine, he had created that situation, because lo and behold, the newly freed areas of Luhansk and Donetsk now come and say that, Mr. Putin, we need your protection from the Ukrainian aggressors that are harming us. So they write a letter to Russia saying that please come and help us. Russia sends its troops in and says, we've come here to help the people of these 2 regions against the Ukrainian aggressors. And that is the reason that they have given the Russian people and the world of why they are now attacking Ukraine. So if you look at it from Russia's narrative, they were saving the people in the Donbas region from Ukrainian aggressors. They've said there was genocide being committed against them. They freed them, and now they have come to protect them, and hence are pushing back and attacking Kiev and the rest of Ukraine. The West sees it in a very different way. They're seeing it as a force which has invaded a sovereign state. and is raining down weapons on civilians. The Ukrainian government has actually called down pretty much all civilians, anyone able between 18 to 60 to pick up weapons and defend themselves. This is against Russian tanks and guns and highly trained soldiers. So that is the situation as it stands. Let me give you an example. It's as if you went into your neighbor's house and said, from now your living room is mine. And the next time you see them in that living room, you say, what are you doing in my territory? I need to push you back. So that is one very broad parallel to put out on what exactly has happened here, and very simply put. Now the question is, what happens next? Biden has been very clear that he is not going to send American boots onto the ground. He's been given a bitter lesson with what happened in Afghanistan. They pulled out troops, and I think just a few hours later the Taliban was back, and that was militarily quite a big hit. So he has said he's not going to send in troops. NATO has said they're not going to send in troops. Their only weapon of choice right now is sanctions. Do sanctions make a difference to Russia? Well, you had the Russian foreign minister coming and saying that I don't remember a time when Russia didn't have Western-backed sanctions. So really, it makes no difference to us. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of the world retaliates, what kind of geopolitical groupings you will now find. Will Russia and China come closer? What that means for US, EU, UK, the whole NATO alliance. And of course, the biggest question from where we're sitting right now, what stance will India take? So this is a fast developing space. Keep watching us for more.